evening, ladies and gentlemen. I've been wondering for some time what the Coalition's Big Society was all about, and I think you've provided the answer. We're very pleased to see you, to see the support for the maintenance and the future of Easlibmp01 Library. And we have just one or two brief introductions. Immediately, and in no particular order, but immediately on my left is Councillor John Tanner-Smith, who is leading on behalf of Easlibmp Town Council as far as the library discussions are concerned, and trying to coordinate all the different groups and organisations that are supporting it. Next to him is Councillor Peter Samway, County Councillor, sorry, and District Councillor Jeff Ellis, Town Councillor Neil Madden, and Clerk to the Council Claire Armitage. On my right is the Guest of Honour, Derek Law, I'll introduce formally in a moment. On his right, Julie Blaisdell, County Councillor Caroline Patmore, County Councillor Gareth Dadd, and Town Councillor Canon Harrison. I think there are one or two other councillors here, but those up here have come so that there are extra seats in the audience. Derek Law is the Corporate Director of Adult and Community Services, so we're very privileged to have him come tonight. Julie Blaisdell is the Assistant Director of Adult and Community Services, brackets, libraries, brackets. And I do hope that you're going to give them a sympathetic and fair hearing tonight. The reason why is because if you like to put yourselves in their place, would you like to come and defend an unpopular cause in front of 200 people? This is Easlibmp, not Egypt. And if there is any unacceptable behaviour, the meeting will be closed and you will lose your opportunity to ask questions. Right? So, without further ado, we'll go into the agenda and I'll say a bit more about the order of service later.
Right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm really pleased to, I mean, it sounds odd this, doesn't it? I'm expecting some challenging questions, by the way, so although I thank the Chairman very much for protecting me to some degree, I'm expecting, quite rightly, some questions from the floor that will stretch us somewhat. Ironically, we've been rather pleased with the public response. That might sound odd, but for me it's a ringing, and for Julie, it's a ringing endorsement of the value to which North Yorkshire Public attribute to its libraries, which is a good thing, because had there not been a murmur, then we'd have probably been rather disappointed, because we would hope that you would have the response that you've had. I'm going to briefly put the presentation in context, and then Julie will go into some of the detail. But the first thing I want to say, and I really do mean this, is that we're not here to close your library. And I want you to hear that loud and clear. We are here to work with you, thankfully now over a longer period of time, more on that anon. But what I do need to set it in the context of, you'll have heard it in the press over the past few days, that the County Council, through no fault of its own, has had a financial settlement that leaves it £69 million short over a 4-year period. What's even more challenging is because we have to find so much of that money in the first year, nearly half of it, more than half of it, £37 million to be exact, means that having to make decisions that probably ordinarily would have made over a 4-year period means that we have to, the pain's more difficult to manage. And that's why I will come back to a longer timescale in a minute. Of that 37 million, my directorate has to find nearly half of that, because I'm part of the biggest directorate, Adult Community Services, which includes social care. And for its part, over the 4 years, Libraries has to find 2.1 million, with other things approaching 2.3 million. And the bigger challenge for Julie and her service, as you'll hear from her, is to find $1 million of that, over $1 million of that in the first year. Now that's really quite challenging. But two issues which I think will enable us to work more effectively with communities like Easlibmp01, and clearly there's some commitment here, hence your interest, together with the County Council, to make this work and for it to financially stack up, so that Easlibmp01 doesn't have an unwanted burden financially. And I think that we've now got a decision that will give us that time. Secondly, and we are listening. We've been around the county now to many places like Easlibmp01 and listened to what communities said to us. And if there's one emerging theme that is coming through, it's one about spreading the pain more evenly across the county. And we are going to have to be mindful of that. So what I'm saying to you is we're listening, we're taking notes as we go along. And what today will form, what tonight will form, is part of that consultation. We'll listen to what you've got to say today, we'll take notes. Hopefully, is this being recorded, by the way, Chairman?
Yes, it is.
Video camera up there. I'm not sure whether they're recording.
Is it being recorded?
Yes, it is.
Good. I mean, I'm just saying that because it's helpful, because then we don't, if we have a copy of the recording, then we can make sure that not only have we heard what you've said tonight, but we can check out what it is that you said later, so that we can take proper note of what it is that the Easlibmp01 community have told us and asked us to bear in mind and take consideration of. So without further ado, I'll just pass on now to Julie, who'll give you a short presentation, and then of course we'll field whatever questions you throw at us. Thank you.
And once again, thank you all for coming. I think you've been introduced to me by a couple of people, Brian and Derek, and as it says, my name's Julie Blaisdell, Assistant Director, Library and Community Services. Community Services actually includes registration, births, marriages and deaths, archives, public record office and various other parts of the directorate. But principally, my main area of responsibility is actually the library service. And interestingly enough, for some of you perhaps, I am actually a qualified librarian. I've actually been working in libraries for about 30 years now. And I would say to you, this is probably, in my experience at that time, at the coalface, unprecedented in the sense that library services are probably facing, as many of you know, their greatest challenge for a long time. And as we know, there's been a lot of media attention given to the whole debate. And Easlibmp01, for its great sort of efforts, has actually been involved in that. And I would echo very much what Derek has said, that as a person responsible for the service, it's actually a massive compliment to us that people feel so passionate about the service that we also feel passionate about, and I think that's very important to get that across to you this evening, if nothing else, that myself and the team responsible for what you all care about so deeply are actually gratified that you think we've been giving you what you want for so long. I think if people had stayed away in their droves, we might have thought differently about it, so we do appreciate your support. What I would like to do is give you a little bit of background. Derek's alluded to the issues that are facing the County Council, and those are stark. They are massive considerations, not just for North Yorkshire, but obviously for local government in general. And what I would like to say perhaps is that, You know, libraries in other parts of the country are being seen as a soft touch by their local authorities, and again that's come out in the national coverage. But I would say that North Yorkshire actually hasn't taken that approach towards its library service. And again, one of the things that I would like to get across to you is that North Yorkshire actually is really asking the library service for its fair amount. Although it doesn't feel like that, possibly because other parts of what North Yorkshire provide do get grant funding for different parts of its services. The library service relies entirely on what it gets from the county council, so therefore perhaps not as insulated as other services might be. But the other thing I think is worth saying is that what's happening is actually against a background of savings that the service has already made. And I think it's fair to say that over the last 3 years, we've actually taken out over £1 million from the service. But people haven't necessarily noticed that. And that's because what we've done, as much as we were able to, was to protect the front line. Everything that we've done leading up to this point, we've done against the back office. So if you like, we've looked at ways of modernising the service, bringing in new technology. We've renegotiated the way that we purchase things like our book stock. But we've also looked at, you know, management costs and cut out as much red tape and bureaucracy as we could. And we're still doing that, we're still looking at that. I think what the difference is, and this is the saving that we're required to make, as Derek alluded to, we're being asked now to find exactly the same amount of money starting from the 1st of April. And that is a huge challenge for the service. Essentially, the budget we've got now is approximately £7.5 million, and the savings required will actually total just over £2.3 million over 4 years, but 1.1 of that will have to be found next year. The 2.3, those of you that are mathematicians, and I know Brian picked me up on this at area committee because he's obviously very good with figures, said, well, actually 28%, Julie, is actually 2.1 million, and we have to find 0.2 million of that out of revenue, out of things like income, so the money that we can raise for the service. But basically, I think it's fair to say that essentially we cannot carry on with the kind of budget pressure of losing what is effectively a third of the budget for the service. We can't carry on with what, you know, the way that we're doing it now. And one of the things that we're saying to you tonight, in all honesty, is that as far as we're concerned, the way that we deliver the service now, or if you want to call it the status quo, and that is entirely relying on North Yorkshire County Council to provide all of the revenue funding for all of its buildings, all of its estate, including its mobile fleet, actually we're not going to be able to sustain that. And I think we have to be very open and honest about that. The current service, for those of you who don't know, and I know there's a lot of people here in the audience tonight who've done a lot of research, have looked at, you know, the way that we currently provide the service. We put fact sheets onto the website so that people can look at all the different libraries and the business levels, how much they all cost us to run. But we have an estate of 42 branch libraries, 10 mobiles, a super mobile. Some of you might wonder why we have a super mobile. What's a super mobile? That actually was introduced because a lot of our buildings didn't comply with the Disability Discrimination Act. So what we had to do was bring in a vehicle that would allow people access at those sites where, such as Pateley Bridge, Massam, where people cannot actually gain access to the library through other means. On top of that, we also provide what's known as a home library and information service, and some of you probably know about that, and we might even have some volunteers here from that service in the audience tonight. But again, that's a partnership that we've brokered with the voluntary sector, and we actually serve 2,700 people at the moment, all in their own homes. So those people who can't actually get to